The reason it happened right at 1970s, the westward expansion. The Civil War ended. Everybody moved west. They were trying to find ways to get out here. And the Charles Goodnight from the Goodnight Young Cattle Company, you guys will see that all through Texas, and you've probably seen it in your travels. There's a lot of Goodnight trails and things. Charles, also known as Chuck, that'll be relevant a little bit down the story. So Charles Goodnight, he basically knew to keep soldiers happy, you keep their gear dry and their bellies full. So when the big westward expansion happened, cowboys were in demand. A good cowboy with a trail ball, to run trail to move the cattle was really important. So to get good help, he needed to keep their food dry and keep them fed and keep their gear dry. So before the Chuck Wagon, the cowboys carried everything they owned on their saddle. So it was all their bed rolls, everything. Most of the food they carried was dried salt pork or corn dodgers. And a corn dodger it's an unleavened corn cake biscuit kind of thing. It's like a hockey puck, and they taste like one, but they got a little nutritional value. So Charles Goodnight, Chuck knew that to keep things moving and keep good soldiers, good workers, he had to keep everything fed. So he hired a cookie for the Chuck Wagon. He was the number 2 in charge. The number 2 man in charge, basically he had to be a pretty tough guy, and they usually were just rough stock because there are all these type A personalities. All the cowboys are just, they're cowboys for what it is. So the cookie would be a rough character. So there's a lot of rules on the Chuck Wagon. Our Chuck Wagon is period correct. I actually bought it out of an antique shop in Cortez. The guy used to go around doing the Chuck Wagon dinners, and he retired, and they put it in an antique shop for a while. I took about 14 pictures, and I sent them to Jeannie on a Saturday afternoon, and she told me if I quit sending pictures, she'd let me buy it. So I just kept sending, just squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we bought the Chuck Wagon. It is period correct. If you guys look, the important parts on the bottom in there, this bottom piece in the back is where they carried the Dutch oven. So when they were hot, they could wrap them in burlap and sit on there. The cookie would cook 2 meals a day and give them something for breakfast, and then he'd give them something to carry out on the trail, and then he'd feed them dinner. These were usually pulled by a team of oxen or a pair of mules, because they just kept a steady pace in front of them. The important part you see on the bottom, there is it's a buffalo hide on the bottom. It usually hangs a little higher than that, but the squirrels have helped me with my ropes, and they've dropped my ropes down. But what that buffalo hide is for, it's called a possum belly, and it's designed to carry the dry matter so they could build fires at the next thing. It'd be buffalo chips, wood, whatever else. The important big thing you see on the side of the wagon is the water barrel. Water is important. Keep clean water so you can have water to cook with, the men to wash in and drink and everything else. We don't have purposes for water barrels anymore made out of oak, so that is a whiskey barrel from Missouri, but we've made the top as it would be period correct. So it's all hand-forged iron, and it's actually a proper water barrel now. But that's from a stave oak barrel company in Missouri. On the front of the wagon, you guys will notice there's a toolbox that carries all the stuff for the horses, to reshoe, put shoes on their feet, and everything else. The back is a little different. So the back is basically the kitchen, and everything fold down off of that. The military wagons, which they originally used, this one is close to being period correct, but the only difference between Charles Goodnight's wagon and this one is he used a Studebaker wagon. And the Studebaker wagon had, yes, the Studebaker car kind of deal, same thing. They were a Studebaker carriage company before they manufactured cars.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they were a Studebaker. So Studebaker actually made metal running gear, and they're the ones that sold all the wagons to the military to haul the surplus gear and gold and all that stuff and cannonballs and everything else. So the only difference would be to have iron running gear. The Chuck Wagon was very important. It was the address for the cowboys for several months. They would move thousands and thousands of head of cattle, and it would, they go on a 1,000-mile trip. It would take, 12 to 14 cowboys. So this was their livelihood for 3 and 4 months at a time. So everything they did here. None of the people are allowed to touch anything on the Chuck Wagon unless the cookie said so. Otherwise, he gets you. The only thing the cowboys were allowed to touch was the coffee pot. And once you took the coffee pot in hand, you made the rounds. That was the polite thing to fill everybody's cup up. The